We're going to be starting at the back of the machine today if you have a back of the machine. If you don't, if you only have one platform, go ahead and do this at the front of your machine. One yellow spring for me, or one light spring, will be harder at the back, and no springs will be a little bit easier. If you're at the front of the machine, one light spring will be a little bit easier, no springs a little bit harder. We'll start in a forearm plank for just 40 seconds. Forearms on the platform, toes on your carriage. Taking your shoulders out of your ears, elbows directly under your shoulders, hips out of the well, pelvis tucked in tight, heels on top of your toes. We'll go 20 seconds, continuing to breathe. You got stillness for 15 seconds, then we start to walk the plank in 10, up palm to palm, down forearm to forearm. In 5, in 3, 2, and 1, up palm to palm, down forearm to forearm. Making sure that your lower body is completely still, doesn't move. If you need to modify, you're dropping down to your knees. Amplification will be to stay up on your toes. Taking your knees or your toes a little bit further apart will help keep those hips still. Taking your heels or taking your knees closer together will make things a little bit harder. In 8 seconds, you're up on your toes. Your choice in 3 seconds, forearms or palms. Plank to pike in 2 and 1. Toes or knees, palms or forearms, plank to pike, lift your hips up, linger at the top for just a little bit, and then slowly drop those hips right back down, but never into the well. We want to make sure that we're scooping up from our center core right there in our lower abs, rather than pulling from our hip flexors. Your weight shifts forward. Your heels get higher, your belly button gets higher into your spine with every single pike. 15 seconds, everyone's down on their forearms and their knees in a crunch. In 10 seconds, we're crunching it out, forearms and knees. 5, in 3, 2, and 1. Crunching it out, forearms and knees, round your spine, vertebrae by vertebrae, starting with those vertebrae right there between your shoulder blades. Lifting your hips up to the ceiling, same thing, pulling your belly button high, diaphragm up, belly button in, stopping your knees before they hit your hips. Want to make sure that we're using our center core for this rather than just pulling our knees forward and back. That becomes a hip flexor movement. We want to protect those hip flexors and use our center core almost like you're going to somersault over. You're looking back at your knees at the top of this crunch and then dropping your hips back down. In 8 seconds, take it to the top of your crunch. In 3, 2, and 1, top of your crunch, hold. Now pulse your hips up an inch, down an inch, little tiny pulse for 8. Drop your hips for a full range saw. In 3, 2, and 1, dropping your hips for a full range saw. You press away from that back platform, taking your chest over the well, and then slowly restack your shoulders right over your elbows. Lower body is completely still and silent for this one. Now we're using our upper core. Controlling this movement, breathing in as you drive back and then out as you drive forward. We'll take it all the way out to the furthest point in our saw in 5, in 3, 2, and 1, all the way out, hold. Now tuck your hips up an inch, down an inch. Your pelvis tilts forward, your belly button gets higher. We're just tucking our hips up an inch, down an inch for 5. Inchworm in 3, 2, and 1. Inchworm crunch first. Then saw. So an inchworm is a 4-part movement. It's 1 crunch up, crunch down, saw out, and then saw in. Should take you about 16 seconds to get through 1. If you're advanced, maybe give me 20, 25 seconds for an inchworm. 30 seconds, we ride it to the front of the machine. Everything's gonna get a little bit nicer there. Unless you're already at the front, just stay there. We'll go 20 seconds. You got time for about one more inchworm. High plank hold facing the back of your machine. In 10 seconds, high plank hold. In 5, in 3, 2, and 1. High plank hold facing the back of your machine. Now adding on a light spring at the front will make this nicer, a little easier. 0 springs will be a little bit harder. We're in a high plank hold for 5. You bend your knees in 3, 2, and 1. Cannonball crunch, driving your knees in, stopping them right under your hips or maybe right under your belly button for an advanced option. Your back stays flat, then you extend right back out into that high plank hold. That's 1 cannonball crunch. We'll continue to move that way. Knees bend in, knees extend. 10 seconds, stop your knees right under your hips. Pulse is coming up in 5. In 3, 2, and 1. Knees under hips. Now pulse your hips up an inch, down an inch. Little tiny pulse up and down like you're rolling a ball from your head down to your tailbone. We'll go back to our high plank hold in 5. In 3, 2, and 1. From here, walk the plank down, forearm, forearm, up, palm to palm. First modification is to take your feet further apart. Second modification is to drop down to your knees and continue moving with your upper body. It's just 15 seconds, then we're all in a 30-second forearm plank. 8 seconds, you're on your forearms and your toes if you can. In 3, 2, and 1. 30-second forearm plank hold is now 25 seconds. Hips are out of the well, heels over toes. Make sure that your weight is not jutting over your shoulders. Your elbows should be under those shoulders. Pelvis is tilted forward. 10 seconds now. We're sawing our forearms in 5, in 3, 2, and 1. Sawing your forearms forward and back. Option to stay up on your toes or option to drop down to your knees for a nicer option. Press the carriage away from you. Linger at that sticky point just a little bit longer than you think you can. 1 big deep breath in and then restack your elbows right under your shoulders. Very similar to what we did at the back of the machine, except for now we're resisting against that spring, pressing it out and then dragging it right back in. 10 seconds, saw your forearms all the way forward. In 5, in 3, 2, and 1, all the way forward. Hold, big deep breath. Now pulse the carriage out an inch, in an inch. 10 seconds, pop up to your palms. Stay on your knees. In 5, in 3, 2, and 1. We have ab roller to finish. Very similar movement. We're pressing the carriage all the way away and then dragging it right back in. You might be able to get a little bit further in your range of motion, especially if you have a support spring on here. Keeping your pelvis tucked. Find that sticky point right where you start to shake. Linger there for just a little longer and then restack. Same thing, lower body completely still. So we're not driving our hips forward and back. We're not in tabletop. Our hips are in alignment with our shoulders and our knees. 10 seconds, drive the carriage all the way out. In 5, in 3, 2, and 1. This is where you finish. Drive it all the way out, hold. Now pulse the carriage out an inch, in an inch. Then tuck your hips up an inch, down an inch. Interchanging between those two pulses, one with the carriage, one with the hips. You got 15 seconds and you are done with this core workout. In 10 seconds, you are finished. Big deep breath, keep moving for 5, for 3, 2, and 1. You are all done. Good job. Make sure to stretch it out. If you got through that, you're a beast. That was a hard one. As always, I have more classes on my profile. If you want to hit lower body or upper body Or if you're crazy and you want to do another ab sequence, you'll find more classes there. Make sure to follow, subscribe. Let me know if there's anything you want to see next week.